I kind of want to start by telling people like what my job actually is as a recruiter, because I think that'll help like ground people in this conversation. I'm coming at this as kind of a middleman. So I work with brands, they come to us, they tell us exactly what they want from, or like what they think they need for a position. And then I'm going out to market and I'm trying to solve a puzzle. So I'm kind of coming to this conversation with some of my own opinions, but a lot of what I think could be more helpful for people here is like what the market is telling me on both sides. So
and you're doing that for like massive creative brands, right?
Yes.
You want to give some like examples or?
Everything from, we've done a lot with Sweetgreen. We actually have worked with DoorDash.
Did you do recruits? All right, no.
We do a lot with freelance, but also, you know, small brands on the up and up like Air. We do B2B, we do consumer, we do everything, but I specifically work within marketing and creative, so it's a little bit more niche than just like a generalist recruiter.
Yeah, and I think to put some perspective on what we're going to chat about here, so you work within actually attracting some of this talent for these big brands. I was a marketing leader who became a creator, and then now enable a lot of other creatives to become creators, a number of which I see in this room, which is awesome. But this conversation is about that like combination of work. What do brands actually looking for now? What do you do to promote yourself in your own creative career? And I'd actually like to ask some questions out there, and I'll just get the blood flowing real quick. Like, how many of y'all have been at the company that you're at for more than 4 years? You want to raise a hand? All right, it's a pretty decent amount. How many of y'all make content to promote whatever you do creatively, like personally? All right, it's a pretty decent amount. And then how many of you have switched jobs in the last like 12 months? All right, just want to get a head check of where we're at. Cool. But I guess I'd like to start with what is actually in demand now? What is the roles that these places are looking for creative jobs that you're like, I can't get enough of these people?
Yeah, I think I can actually start by industry because I was actually going through our database. I'm trying to bring a little bit of like data and real life things right now, but health, wellness, longevity, that world is really, really hot right now. It could be across anything from apps to CPG brands to like mental health and wellness. That's really, really hot. And then also B2B is like our big thing right now. And what's interesting, and I think Air is a really good example of this right now, is we're finding they really want a lot of creatives and marketers that are able to kind of act like the company is a consumer. So they're trying to do a lot more storytelling than they've ever done in the past. So I actually made a list of some things that we're hiring in it because it's a lot. So I would say that we're getting a lot of social first creatives, and that can mean a lot of different things. And I think that's one thing that companies need to also decide like what that actually means for them. But like social first art directors. So you might have more of a traditional path, but then you're really focusing in on just content for social platforms. We are hiring a lot of creators. And I think that can be kind of controversial, and I'd love to get your take on that. A lot of influencer and creator marketers, so helping build out their pool of individuals who create content for them, and then growth and performance creatives, so someone that can actually tie business objectives to creative, and a lot of that I would say is like within paid creative versus organic. And content too, there's a huge push right now for thought leadership. So I know everyone talks about copy going away, but there's a lot of people being like, can you be my CEO and can you talk for them? So like speech writers almost. So that's like, we're hiring a lot. I don't know how it feels for you right now.
No, I mean, that's interesting and mirrors a lot of what I see, where like a lot of these traditional roles where it's like no longer, hey, I want a designer, I want a copywriter, I want an art director. It's like, hey, we actually need a copywriter for our CEO's content for these social networks.
Yes.
Yeah, hey, we need a art director, but it has to be social first. It's basically everything plus content, or everything plus strategy for content. And that's interesting because I feel like there's a massive gap. Like one of the things, like when I started making videos online, it was because we weren't good at it, the brand I was working at. And I was like, I want to learn this, but there's
What brand was it?
So what?
Just kidding.
Yeah.
What brand was really shitty at making content?
But it was, and we got very good at it over time, and like we could understand it more, but it's because there's no mentorship level, right? There's this previously, like when I was a designer, I was being mentored by older designers to help me get better at that. That was a very straightforward, expected relationship. But then right now, like the majority of Gen X boomer marketing leaders can teach you frameworks with which to understand and approach things and messaging and positioning, but they're not inherently understanding the way everything is distributed. And so there's this kind of talent gap where if you haven't participated in this internet economy, then you don't really know how to make it move. And that's an interesting gap.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, I'm not a creative by any means. I talk to them all day. I work with brands all day. How do you even approach that? Did you do a lot of learning yourself, or you're just like, I'm talking to my growth people and they have set up these sick dashboards and they said they could do it for me? Like, how do you even start the process?
I was like, I'm going to make so I started by saying, I want to get 5,000 views on a TikTok I was 36 at the time, as a 36-year-old male. Which is, anyway, it was a dark moment in time. And that took, I think it was 38 TikToks to get 5,000. That was a rough 38, let me tell you. Because it's just like, it's bad. But again, there was no recipe. And I bought a course. from a 21-year-old that was like $100 that taught me the basics, who is now, he runs this thing called Creators Corner. This is like massive business now, ironically. But there's no playbooks. You have to learn that. Now there's more of an infrastructure. But I think for where creatives look at it now is like when you're trying to position yourself for those jobs, how do you get, either you have to be in an experience where you're producing things that then get into this big content infrastructure, or you have to be kind of doing it in your own right. But either one of those like helps shape your portfolio. But I'm curious, when you're screening people in this modern era, where you're like, how do you actually tell if someone's proficient in all these wild things that are happening in the world? Like, what are brands' approaches, or what do you think you can actually do to do that process well?
I think a lot of the times it sounds so crazy, but it does actually come off in the conversation. If people cannot articulate what they do, it's actually, I'm like, what are you saying? Like, I talk to you guys all day, and if you're confusing me about posting an Instagram, I'm just like, okay, you clearly don't do this well. I do a lot of research on my own end too. Like, I'm not just, reaching out willy-nilly to anyone with like TikTok or content creator in their title. I'm looking at what brands are making great content, and then I'm asking them, from strategy to execution, walk me through that pipeline. Who's in charge of what? Are you doing every single thing here? Or are you talking to a creative director? So I think when you're hiring on your team or working with a recruiter, they're going to be trying to ask you like great questions. Like, that's how you get to the nuggets of truth, because if people start stumbling around or they don't really know what they're talking about, you can kind of fish it out after doing it for a while. But I do think then like asking for a portfolio and having a portfolio is really important, and being able to like detail out what you actually did, even if you just directed it versus wrote it or whatever it is.
Do you find a lot of people sharing their social media as their portfolio, or is there kind of a split between those?
Okay, so now brands ask for both. Like, it depends like who I'm working with, but I just started working with a productivity company, and the hiring manager comes from CPG. It's a B2B brand, and I always ask, like, do you want someone coming from a similar space, or like, are there brands that you look at that are exciting? She's like, no, honestly, if they can just send their personal portfolio, that's all I need. I need a humorous content creator. I don't care if they have 5,000 followers, 2,000 followers, but if their content is kind of in line with the vibe, just like what we're trying to do as a brand, send that over. So I have mixed opinions on asking for someone's personal work and their work, because some social people don't look at it that way. Like, they might have 200 followers on their personal account because they're burnt out and they don't want to work on it. But I think with content creators, it's really important to have your own personal portfolio. And I guess for you, because right now in your line of business, like, are you also working with brands on creative and strategy? And
yeah, and so when I started making content, that came in really quick. And actually, one thing I noticed about that I think is really useful for any creative to think about is if I made content about a niche, it gets shared within the niche. So I was working with a firm that makes websites mostly for beauty brands. They did like the Rode website, the Hourglass website, and we were making videos about the beauty industry. I haven't made traditionally a lot of stuff about that, but since there was not a lot of content about like tactical like marketing and web optimization in beauty, there's plenty of beauty content overall, but not much of that. It was disproportionately shared. Those videos only got 40, 50,000 views, but every single beauty company like is in every work Slack. And with that came all the biggest names in beauty, like in my DMs, and me being like, hey, guess what? I don't actually know that much. Like, I can talk to you about this one specific thing. But that's an important thing to think about as a creative, is that everyone's like, oh, if I don't get X amount of views or whatever, but the algorithms are extremely good at putting content, especially portfolio content or content about an industry, in front of the people that like that industry, regardless of what else you've posted about. And if you're trying to get attention, or to your point, I want to work in wellness now, or I want to do whatever, if you are talking about that, or you're being critical of that, or you're doing spec work in that you promote online, it goes directly to those people. It's like a magic cheat code that you can't imagine exists. And since I make content about all kinds of industries, I am obsessed and fascinated by everything. And so I like to make content about that. But with that comes every time you do 3 videos about the running and fitness industry, all of a sudden you have all this conversation that boils up around that. And I think that's a really important tool for people to consider.
Yeah. I feel like it's really interesting too, thinking about someone's personal portfolio, whether you're a creative or a content creator, as well as just like your work portfolio, because I do think a lot of the times when we're working with brands, they actually will ask for personal work because they want to see like your taste, what you're interested in. Hiring right now, it's kind of a shit show because there are so many people that are actually qualified for the same job. And so to differentiate a lot of the time, they're not just looking at your skill set, because a lot of people can do that, but they're looking at, like, are they curious? Are they excited? Do they have passions? Can they bring a new point of view to the team? So I do love the idea of like having a separate personal portfolio, whether it's a creator or you're just doing design work on the side.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. One of the biggest questions that I'm always asking whenever I'm like talking to a brand who's in that, they're hiring someone for like a new age marketing team. And the question is always like, do they get it? Yeah. Do they understand that like if you put these couple things together, it's a formula that you can make content move on the internet? Yeah. And there's basically camps that do or don't. They make really interesting ideas or amazing art, but they don't get it. They don't understand, and you can get any social network. You could get YouTube, Substack, whatever it looks like, but you understand how to propel something outside of its shell into like a more viral world. And it's kind of a yes or no, and it really comes down to how do you evaluate that? Yeah. And if you don't understand that, how do you put yourself in the place to get that skill set? Because it ties to this bigger idea that a lot of marketing teams have to shift where it's like we used to have a marketing budget and we would think about making content within that budget. Now it's like we have content. Yeah. And then there's marketing that promotes that content is like it's a more modern way of thinking. And then it's like, okay, well, how do you fit into that, in whatever part of the work that you do?
Okay, I have a question for you, and I'll touch on it too, but it kind of goes back to what you were saying before in terms of like they want you to be able to push across platforms and make it go viral. And I think that's like a huge thing that like when that pops up in my like intake calls, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what does go viral mean to you? And you kind of like have to flip the script on them, and they're like, they don't know the answer to it. But I'm curious, when you're working with brands or talking to creators that are like, I'm trying to make it go viral, how are you helping to educate them, like what that means? Are you like, do you have the 50K, like what's your budget? It means we have to do a ton of brand awareness, or we need to just like let me take the keys to the car and let someone just run with it. Like how do you balance that when you're...
So I live within this world, and I've had to have this conversation a bunch. And I think the thing that's made some of my content succeed and helps me in work is the ability to translate what's actually happening on social media to like a C-suite. Okay. And it's kind of like it's a 3-tiered system. The first is the basics of how the internet works, where you go like, okay, there's views on the product, and there's the views you want on the product. Like that's kind of part one. And the best way to look at that is like new reach. You're like, all right, well, if you have 1 million followers, do you want to reach your existing followers, or you want to reach new people? What's the goal there? And Instagram will show you that. That's inside the metrics they have. TikTok will show you that. You can even see it, like even Substack, you open an email, or the opens and views you got beyond your existing audience. So you need to understand, hey, what are you going for? That's kind of step one. And then number 2 is explain it in terms they understand. So the first I always use is the funnel, where it's like, if you understand a traditional marketing funnel, where it's like awareness, nurture, convert, the awareness one is what they're looking for. Like we want virality, we want this broad awareness. I'm like, yeah, there's actually a formula for that. There's only like 4 things that work for broad awareness in content and social media. The first is humor, like doing skits within that. The second is these like episodic and social shows and things like, characters, stuff like we saw Zarya does, or obviously a lot of brands are doing like social shows now. Good one. Yeah, there's a handful of those. There's only like a handful of angles, and most of them aren't talking about your product. Your product is extremely secondary to what happens on the content, right? And so if you're not making any of those subjects, then you're not going to hit virality. You're not going to hit that extremely broad awareness. And so if you have nothing in that funnel, then everything else that works below it's not going to work as well. And then once they kind of see that, they go, okay, we need something to fill this top of funnel. You can actually get into a conversation. Yeah. And then from there, you need a framework to evaluate content against itself. And that's one of the hardest things everyone has. They look, our views month over month, or our follower growth month over month. And it's like, really, well, actually it's like you versus market, and then your types of content versus other types of content versus your type of content versus that type of content last month because the algorithm changes. And these are actually pretty simple concepts you can solve with a spreadsheet, but you have to like both do it and measure it and have a system for it, and also like explain that to the people you're working with. Like, hey, this is why we have a pillar system, and this is a top of funnel piece of content versus a bottom of funnel. So it's okay if the bottom funnel doesn't do well, if it achieves our goals. It's just taking all this existing vernacular we have and applying it to like the new era.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes in, well, one, I think you could use AI for that pretty easily by creating some type of like inputs. Like I know this is all about AI. I don't actually use AI at all except to like help my processes move quicker, but I've had so many candidates that are like, I built a custom dashboard by just inputting, it spit it out, and I threw it in Excel, and it's changed my life, and now I can make decisions so much easier, and the CEO says yes because he understands that this will hit business goals. So like, that's interesting. Being able to tie the strategy back to the work and showing it. And like, I guess that's right now for us, and what we had mentioned before, that's like one of the biggest things you need now as a creator. Like you don't get to make pretty things anymore. They want it to be like, is this driving sales?
Yeah, you
like,
have to be able to present a slide in a deck
yeah.
next to all the other slides that make sense, which is expected. I'm actually curious about the AI question.
Yeah.
When you're getting asked about roles, are people asking for a certain level of AI proficiency, or are they evaluating that? Does that come up?
So the thing is, clients will say, we want them to know AI, and you have to be like, what does that mean? Like, what exactly do you want them to be able to say they use AI? Because anyone can do that. We don't have that many clients right now that are asking for creatives that understand AI, but we do see it a lot more on the marketing side of the house because, you know, everyone's just trying to cut costs all the time. Like, it's a sad truth. Like, the economy is not fantastic. So a lot of these jobs are more like, we need someone to take our CRM and use AI and make a crazy new process that makes it a lot easier for us. But across creative, it's actually not come up that much.
And yeah, it's interesting because I think we talk about it all the time where there's this pressure that you have to be on it, but then it's like, is it really, how much, I think it's a disordinate amount of time spent trying to think about how you work through it and do on that versus what the actual need is.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think just if you're a curious creative, like you're gonna wanna start using new mediums no matter what, like using a digital camera versus something else, or, you know, any Adobe suite, whatever it is, like you should play around with it. And if it fits into your workflow, great. But at the end of the day, all of these brands and marketing like need to make a connection with people. And like that whole J. Crew thing that just blew up in their face was like, okay, well, that was a huge backfire, and you can just hire models to do that.
Yeah, that was well, it's interesting. You live in these disparate worlds. Like Hennessy posts AI content all the time, like on their main feed, and no one notices or cares, and they just comment on it. And it's really, I feel like it's almost like become the political spectrum, where it's like, hey, I'm really against it, and I'm going to comment that I'm against it whenever I see it, or I just don't care at all. Or you're in this bubble where, hey, I love this, and I consume AI creators constantly because I'm curious about what this looks like, and they kind of operate in these like little disparate worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are getting hired by someone and they ask, like, do you use AI? Say yes, but then like tell them the program they're using and what for specifically. Like maybe it is for presentations and it just makes things a lot more pretty. But like you should be specific if they ask about it, or just be like, no, I really only use it to help me write better emails because that's not my strong suit. I do creative work.
Yeah, and I do think if you're putting it all, I still think we're in an era where it's like way too early to put that on your main feed in social media unless you like really deeply know what you're doing. And if you have executives that are like encouraging you to do that, then you need to like really back them up. Because even in like the J. Crew instance, it was like handled in every single way the wrong way.
Poorly.
Yeah. And they've been going south for a while, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, exactly.